Growing up in an abusive environment is not the starting point most people would choose. This journey I have been on has not been without challenges or mistakes, but these challenges have given me insight and have taught me lessons in setting goals, making plans, and working hard to achieve success. In spite of the odds, I have reached personal goals in motorcycle racing, business, education, and now to serve the citizens of the 13th District. It is time for you to have representation that shares your experiences, knows your challenges, and encourages your determination. We can look at Huntsville, Alabama and see firsthand how aerospace and high-tech manufacturing facilities have transformed the community. I support legislation that focuses on training STEM subjects and establishing marketable skills in high school curriculums and after-school programs. In addition, we have to create technical education learning centers or programs that teach our adult citizens how to perform the skilled jobs needed by relocating businesses. Please support me, Cesar Gonzales, as I seek to properly represent the hardworking citizens of the 13th District. I'm Cesar Gonzales, and I approve this message.
Okay, today is July 21st? July 21st, 2022? Now, July is almost over with already. We're pleased to be here in the presence of none only than candidate for U.S. House of Representatives, Cesar Gonzales, and if the studio audience would not clap so loudly, that would be. That was a cue. All right. Jojo, what are you doing?
Sleep at a job over there.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, got it. Okay, so any rate, good day.
What? Better late than never. Better late than never.
It's a good day. It's a good day for us, for the economy, for people of color, for people in the 13th District. We're happy to have you aboard here today. I'm honored to be in your presence. And I know a lot about you, but we want to share a little bit about you with everybody else. I'm honored to work on your team. Miss Angel is here. Rashid Muhammad is here. Dominique. The whole RNC is here. You know what I mean? And so we're excited. We got Jay in the building. That's enough in itself.
Not verified, but I am Jay. They remind me every time I go.
Certified. Right.
Certified, not verified.
Right. She's being a conversation certified. So, but there's something special about what you have going on. We want to explain to everybody. There's something special about your team. We are your team. We believe in what you're doing. Yes. I can tell you that Miss Angel certainly does.
Yes.
You know, I think it's appropriate to give people flowers while they're living.
Yes.
And
I love flowers.
And she is. I've never seen someone more diligent than Miss Angel Payne. And of course, when we get beyond what we're doing here, we want to definitely support her in her executive endeavors.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, right. So, but tell us a little bit about you. We saw the video, a great video, and you know, being a Cuban American, but a brother of color.
Yes.
You know, from New York, and you come down here to the South, and we represent the Republican Party very proudly. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you decided to get into politics, because you're widely successful as an individual. So it cannot be about the money.
Nah, it's definitely not about the money. It's about, if you got to look at it from where the beginnings. I grew up in New York, born in Harlem, raised on the island. Okay, I was awarded a state. I grew up in a boys' home. That alone gave me a significant amount of exposure to the system and how the system operates, how sometimes the system doesn't work as well as effectively as it should. Springboarding from there, being on the streets, being in the game, learning what's going on the streets, the struggles of the inner city communities and what we have to face as people of color is sort of lost. I think the Republican Party has for many years struggled with speaking to the people in the community. And I think to effectively legislate for the community, you have to be a part of the community. You can't be somebody, an academic from the outside looking in saying, oh, well, you know, we recommend you do X, Y, and Z, because there are so many little factors that get missed by these academics that we see, that we're familiar with. And thus, I'm coming forward, having gone through what I've been through, being on the streets, all the way to working on the Crew Dragon capsule at SpaceX as an engineer and as a fabricator. There's got to be a mechanism in place that facilitates that, particularly in the inner city communities, which is where I'm from. This is my community, and these are my people. I want what I was afforded. I was afforded an opportunity to have a sense of direction, to establish a sense of self-worth, and to go forward. And it started with a skill set, learning a skill set. I think one of my colleagues here is from New York. One of the things I would ask you, as a person from New York, if I say one thing, I want to get your opinion. BOCES.
I went to BOCES. I'm a big fan of BOCES. I went to BOCES. Laris did tell me that you were interested in the BOCES situation. And, well, that was your intent. And I went to a BOCES, and I think that it was a game changer for me as a whole. Like, it really made me realize. I started off going for cosmetology. I thought I wanted to do hair. And then I ended up doing early childhood. And it really set me up for a transition to college, because I felt like you didn't have to go to college. But after I went to early childhood education, we were able to like have our own preschool classroom and everything. It was actually gave us way more opportunity than I feel like a lot of people were allowed it in their high school journeys. So I am a huge advocate for trade schools as a whole. I'm gonna stay on track. I could go on, but that also, as an adult human, I own my own trade school now. I do hospitality, bartending, training, service industry, all those types of curriculums. But I also teach people now a trade that they might not have to necessarily go to an educational institute that would be a college for, so they can get a job.
So it's fair to say that learning a trade is a kind of a gateway.
I think it's more beneficial than anything else. That's absolutely fair to say, because most people, I think that college is intimidating for a lot of people that weren't given the structure and the home that they needed in order to be successful with that route. But when you do a trade, it is much more hands-on. It's a tangible thing that you know you can do as soon as you do it. And when you do that in high school, it keeps you out of trouble because you have that to focus on. You know that you can advance within that.
And if I can throw this in there, I mean, when you go to a party, being able to talk about Beowulf is just conversation.
Right. Which
it's not worth $40,000 a year, but go ahead.
I know that's
No, I agree. The trade school is really a game changer. Like, I agree with that 1,000%.
Yeah, I mean, that's what changed for me. That's what changed my life, my trajectory from being in the game, getting caught up in the system, ending up where a lot of us do here from the inner city.
Yeah.
But what it did is, you know, I had a conversation with my brother, Danny, and I said, Donnie, what made the difference for us? I mean, a lot of guys that we grew up with ended up upstate in penitentiary or messed up on that stuff on the street. And he said, we were too busy working.
Right.
One of the things, my brother, God love him, he's my guy, he's a master electrician. But he always had that focus. And while he was working as an electrician. I'm working as a small engine motorcycle outboard mechanic. We were too busy focused on that and focused on earning an income and being able to afford our own apartment and further on afford a car, be able to afford a comfortable living because we had those skill sets. And I think this needs to be afforded to most of both our children coming up through displaced workers, veterans, that people that have not been able to experience what it's like to have a marketable skill. And I think that's significant. When I came back from working at Blue Origin in West Texas, I interviewed at a couple of positions here in a couple of machine shops here, and of course, the guys looked at my resume and they're like, you're way too qualified for the position we have. I said, well, just tell me what's going on out there, because we have tech schools here and what have you, and they're like, we don't have the skilled labor we need to fill the positions that we have. And these are established machine shops. There was one machine shop that did fixtures for the engines for SpaceX. And I worked on these fixtures when I was out working for SpaceX out in Hawthorne. There needs to be a conduit for people to be able to acquire these skills, to be able to fill these positions. You can't just assume that children are going to graduate and they're going to either go to college or they're just going to loiter around and hopefully land somewhere. You've got to give them a sense of direction. And this is especially important in the black community where we're fighting stereotypes. Things are, let's be honest, you can as a person of color succeed, but it's a bit tougher than the mainstream. And that's as far as I'm going to go with it. I know too many professionals like myself. I know too many engineers that I went to school with. Yo, Rodney. All right.
Yeah.
That to say that the standard, the media standard, the community, the social standard for the black community or for the inner city community is some guy that's in need of assistance. He needs a hand up from Uncle Sugar to get any kind of anywhere.
I've never heard that
shoot straight about this. Let's shoot straight about this. You've got a community that, if you want to go back a few thousand years, built the city of Akun. Mansa Musa, the world's wealthiest man to date. His wealth hasn't been exceeded at $900 billion.
Are we talking about the one that went east and had so much gold that he created inflation and crazy inflation when he reached Egypt? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, he was a Muslim,
Mali,
of course.
Mali, I think.
On his pilgrimage to Mecca, of course, he goes through Egypt, and he's got so much gold, he actually devalues gold in Egypt. And this was a man from Africa, from Mali, where some of my distant ancestors are from.
So first off, CJ, I agree with you. I had put a post up today about a guy interviewed for a driving position. I work in logistics, and I just said that. And you know what people's knee-jerk reaction was? Is that, well, they're sorry people that don't want to work in every community or whatever. And I'm like, I had to revert back to what my dad used to say growing up. He's like, I don't care what's going on in somebody else's house. Right. Okay? We do not have the privilege of being sorry as black men and black women and all that, but when you have a a political apparatus or that is in an atmosphere, an environment that is constantly keeping people dependent on the government by saying, we'll do this for you, we'll do that for you. You know what I mean? A chicken cannot never look up as long as you keep dropping pellets and it's looking down all the time to pick them up.
Now.
And so there's a sense of intrinsic value that people won't even see until later in life. So I walk into the room, I automatically assume that I'm not the smartest person in the room. When I come to the GOP, the first GOP summit, and of course that was before I met Miss Angel, and then I realized that I wasn't. But what I'm saying, you get what I'm saying, because I cannot say it. But I said, hold on, now how the hell are you running for office? Here's the thing: when we push the black community, whether an Afro-Latino like yourself or, you're from the West Indies or Caribbean background like myself, whatever, when you push this, what happens is it actually works, believe it or not, because then when you go in and you know your shit,
Okay.
because there's no nepotism associated with what we have. We don't have generational privilege.
Right.
So when you go in a room, you are a badass. There's an intrinsic value that they don't see up front. But I'm gonna let you do your thing.
No, you brought up an interesting point. I'll give you a scenario. Of course, I've had a couple of motorcycle shops in the area. And there was one time where I had a young man come in the shop. Okay, pants down, the style. And he came in and he wanted a job. And I looked at him and I said, that's me. And if I came into a business with that demeanor, would I want to hire me? Would I want to give me a chance? So I took this young man, I said, what do you want? He said, I need a job, man. I took him by his arm, I walked him back out to the shop, and I looked him in the eye and said, okay, these are the rules here. You're going to pull your pants up. You're going to come in here, you're going to talk to me, you're going to look me in the eyes when you talk to me, and you're going to tell me what you want. Let's try again. So we walked in the shop, and I said, what can I do for you? And he couldn't look at it. Man, I need a job, I said, you need a job because you're on probation, you're about to be revocated. Otherwise, you wouldn't be walking in the door. He said, how do you know?
Because
I didn't want to tell him that was me, but So I said, so I asked him, I says, do you have any skill sets? Have you done anything? Well, nah, I ain't been
He probably
doing
nickel
nothing.
bagged it up a little bit, maybe. Nickel or dime bagged it up.
Yeah,
probably.
you already know what's happened. He was on probation. You already know what's up.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm gonna play with this a little bit. I'm thinking in my head, I'm gonna play with this a little bit. I said, so you got no skill sets. You came into a motorcycle shop and you have never ever touched a bike. Nah, but I like motorcycles. I said, okay, I'm gonna do this with you. I pulled him in the back of the shop, put him in a welding booth. I said, I cut him 2 pieces of steel. I said, weld this. Put a stinger in his hand. It was MIG, of course. So I put the gun in his hand. And I said, weld that. And he looked at me. He's like, man, I ain't never done it, man. What's welding? He's putting 2 pieces of metal together with a melted filler to bond it. Make sense? Yeah. So I gave him the 15-minute rundown on how to weld. Let him weld. And this kid that came into my shop with no skill sets whatsoever laid a stack of dimes like you wouldn't believe. I'd be proud to have laid a weld like that. I wasn't in a position to hire him, but I can tell you he walked out of my shop holding that 2 pieces of that metal that he welded. He walked out of the shop just looking at it like this.
A sense of accomplishment.
He did something that people did not tell him he could do.
Yes.
Right.
That just took it. He's a young black guy. He's gonna get in trouble. You already know them kind of people. You know they're gonna. You know what's gonna happen. You know the ending to this sad story. And nobody ever gave him the opportunity to show him that he could do something.
Yes.
That's why vocational training is so important in my platform. You want to give these young kids, you want to ignore these young kids. You wouldn't want to give them a sense of direction. You want to tell them that there's 60 sexes in the world, that they don't know what, that they're confused about what bathroom to go to, but you're not giving them instruction that they will carry with them the rest of their lives. You're dooming it to failure.
That's right.
So with that, to your point, and I agree 100%. Let's talk about why you want to bring, or what motivated you. Well, I think we have a clear understanding of what motivates you to want to bring vocational high schools to the 13th district. And when I say 13th district, I'm using the 13th district as a starting point. Because if we are successful in the 13th district, then I think that it will be a model that is replicated throughout the state of Georgia and probably throughout the United States of America. If the people, whether they are Democrats, Democrats, or whatever they call themselves these days, are open to actually helping people, instead of selling black suffrage as a way to continue to get people to stand in line to vote. We're interested in solutions, but tell us a little bit, how does that look? What does the money look like? How do we get the money in? Is the money there? Do we have the money? How does this work? Is it going to be an out-of-pocket expense to people if we need child care because of teen pregnancy? Let's talk about your vocational program.
Well, let's not put that in too, because after you're done with that question, I have women's questions. So
Oh,
don't
yeah,
put the child
absolutely.
care in there. But go
Absolutely,
ahead. You asked
absolutely.
a very broad question, so it was a long-winded question.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Yeah.
I just want him to be able to, answer that so then I could chime in. Because,
Yeah.
I'm all for the women. So
Well,
I
I'm
would love
gonna
to
pull you
know.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
pull you in because
I'm a
this
great
is
listener,
my,
but I also would love to know, for women's rights, especially with what's going on in the world right now, what do you feel about just anything? What are you going to do for women? What are women's rights? What do you believe in? That's important to me.
Well, I believe in people. I don't
Okay.
believe in dividing people. I think one of the biggest failings is that we have an incumbent party that wants to just divide people based on sex, based on orientation, based on color and everything. And I'm like, I'm okay with identity. Identify who you are. But that should not be a factor in what you do.
Okay.
Okay? For example, how many times have I seen it where everything, for example, I went into a job where we had to deal with diversity hires.
Okay.
And I won't say what company that is. And their skill sets were substandard, but they were hired because of who they were.
Right. Which happens a lot.
And that was somewhat of a drain on the rest of the party, the rest of the department that I worked at, because we not only had to do our own jobs, but we had to babysit this person who was hired because of who they were. Now, if you have a party, if you have a politician that draws power from identity politics, then there must always be identity issues to draw power from.
Right.
And this is the problem that we have. This has been to the detriment of the inner city communities, of the black communities. So my platform changes that narrative, and it changes it by example. I'm not giving you something I read in a book. These are guidelines that I've lived with. These are guidelines that have saved me, that have brought me off the streets and into prosperity and productivity.
Okay.
For example, your BOCES. BOCES is an acronym for Board of Cooperative Educational Services. It is part of the educational system in New York. And I don't know when you went to BOCES.
Early 2000s.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll say early 2000. Yeah.
Well, I'll not
It
say.
wasn't long ago, but it was pretty long ago because it's 2022. Let's
She
keep in mind.
just-
So, yeah,
she-
and
yeah,
that's,
she
let me
just-
tell you the year.
she just made
Right.
it.
You ain't old.
Right.
You ain't old.
She just made it to
Oh.
30. Better go
I
ahead.
was born in the 90s.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Well,
Just barely got there, but yeah.
I
Close.
went to BOCES in 1980.
Okay.
1979, 1980. And our BOCES facility, we had everything where you could learn everything from welding, masonry, bricklaying. They had a commercial food program. They had a nursing program where the students were graduating with their RN. There was actually a
Their
waiting
RN?
list. Yes, their RN.
Dang, they took that away by the time we got to the nights. You could get your LPN, but not your RN.
They had a child care program at the facility that if you had students that had children,
We
they
had the
could
same.
bring them in.
Yes. We had the same.
This is an organization. This is a program that would literally sustain itself. It will support itself. It'll support the student body, providing
Yeah.
skilled help for the community at large. I would have businesses, manufacturers, any kind of businesses in the area, particularly in the particular area of the 13th district, that would have a direct influence on the curriculum there.
Yeah, that's super important.
Yeah.
I definitely support that, and I think that is because even when you do have like a BOCES or a trade school situation, if you also are not helping provide a job after the skill set is learned, it's not as beneficial. So it would have to be like a partnership within local businesses or within that community, because you can teach somebody anything that you want, but if there's not an actual hiring job for them, it doesn't really matter.
Then what's the
if you have
return
that
on
skill set.
investment?
Right, there's no return on
Eh,
investment, because that did happen to a lot of people. That's the one thing with the BOCES. It's beautiful that it does teach you a skill, but if you do not set it up within your community to have job placement available, then it's almost counteractive.
So let's talk about two components of what you're talking about when we start talking about return on investment. Let's talk about A, what is the actual investment out of pocket? And then B, the 13th district, where is it located in terms of being able to, I don't know, set up for job placement?
Well, you have an incumbent that talks about bringing $15.5 billion into the district. I mean, I'm sure you take 20% of that, you could fund a facility like a vocational.
So it would be nothing out of pocket.
No, absolutely not. BOCES is actually a part of the educational program in New York.
Right.
I see setting it up the same way here. As it was for me, I went to high school up. Once I reached 10th grade, you had the option of going to high school full time to learn academics, or you could go half the day. The other half of the day, you went to BOCES to learn your whatever job skills. Now, you talk about job placement.
I experienced it the same way, so it has
I
not
remember validation.
changed. Yeah, like it has not changed. Same thing.
From a liberal.
Yeah,
Okay.
from a liberal, and 20 years, about 20 years in between, and it's been the same exact thing. Yes.
But what you have is I remember when we had our graduation and we had the funny hats and the little diploma and everything, and all along the back wall you had all these employers.
Oh.
And they're like, hey, you were in Mr. Ames' class, right? Come over here, let's talk.
They missed us on that thing.
You know, there was an anticipation on the part of the businesses to hire BOCES people. That's why BOCES was so popular in the hood.
Right.
In my
right.
hood, it was just like,
Yeah.
you got into BOCES, damn, you on
Yeah.
your way, you
You're
know.
right, yeah.
But
That's so crazy. Hindsight.
that was all reflective of the time period too. This
Beat
was
that up.
during the Carter-Reagan
Yeah.
election cycle.
But it's not uncommon. There's a program in Atlanta Area Tech that's called Year Up, or you know what I mean? That
I know Europe.
That is
I had a good friend who worked for them.
But does
That's
everybody
exactly
have
the
an
same thing.
option to go?
I don't know
Is
if it's
it a
exactly
choice
the
to
same
go, or
thing.
do you have to get or like
Well,
approved to go?
actually,
Accepted.
what Cesar Gonzales is lobbying and pushing for would be something that it not only would it be classified as school choice, but it would also be something that wouldn't be out of pocket. Year Up, while it is not out of pocket, it is a derivative of Atlanta Area Tech. Now, because of where they are located in the 13th district, there's a transportation barrier associated with that, okay? It's not that you can't get there, but the work to get there and get home, the amount of hours and time consumed, cost benefit analysis should not be 50 to 75% of the amount of time that you spend in the program. And so because we have an antiquated, let's be honest, we have a antiquated public transportation system here in Atlanta.
It's terrible. I mean, it's literally awful.
Yeah, and so you literally could find yourself in a situation where if you get into a Year Up program that's limited to I think 22, you get into it, but you got to get there.
At 22?
I think 22 is the cutoff.
See, but if it's, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but like when I went to BOCES, it was not a problem at all. And it was not a, like, selective situation. If you wanted to do it as the student, you got accepted.
Yeah, that's what he's proposing.
You didn't have to, like, do anything extra. But then also, the school provided transportation there and back, and you got back at the same time. You got back at the same time that everybody else would get out of school. So if you had to take a bus home or whatever, you would be at school in time to get on.
So that would be better.
No,
you would
absolutely.
Agree. Okay.
I would agree that it's way more beneficial because.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just, I'm saying, like I'm.
No, she hit it. She's on point.
You can pass it to me. So I mean, so this is House District 13. This is like a U.S. House District 13.
Yes.
So I just looked that up, and that's like south side of Atlanta and like west side of Atlanta. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it actually covers where I grew up. I went to high school down in Riverdale.
Okay.
And which appears to be in HD 13. And when I graduated from high school, I got like a college prep and I got a vocational diploma. I got a diploma, did like a lot of drafting and shop class, all that sort of stuff. And so I guess my question is, particularly when we start talking about like a conservative view of governance, and the conservative view, at least as I understand it, has generally been the idea that like those that govern closest govern best, right? So the idea being that you would, the Fed should like have the least amount of jurisdiction over your life. Like the state should have more, the county should have more, the city should have most, right? And so when I hear you talking about, and so as I graduated from Riverdale High School in 1995.
Right.
And they had a fairly strong vocational program here. So one thing so there are a couple of things that are kind of jumping in my head here. One thing is, how is this different from just like the vocational programs that we have in the high school system now? And the other thing is, as a U.S. rep, what is the channel by which this thing gets pushed down? Like, what's the actual like practical channel by which it gets pushed down to these kids that live in the south side and west side?
Well, you have, of course, the first thing that's often brought up is budgeting, funding, and you have your fiscal conservatives who are going to say less government, less money from government. We need to streamline these programs or eliminate them entirely. There is a component to teaching vocational training and stuff. Of course, you have a liability aspect to it. And let's be frank, we're a litigious society. If some young man lops his finger off in woodshop class, there's an issue. That's why you've had kind of a reduction or elimination, if you will, of a lot of these skilled work centers. Okay, if you incorporate it, number one, incorporate it into the regular educational system, you affect a number of protections that are therein. So the focus tends to be less on any potential liabilities, but rather the educational process itself. That's number one. Number two, for my fiscal conservatives out there, I've seen a lot of these Republicans tout about, well, I voted down this project and I voted down this budget and that budget. And I'm like, well, that's great and everything, but it's still passed. you could wear that downvote as a gold star on your crown, but the money still went through. If we were better stewards of the federal funding that comes through, we could probably do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. Do you disagree?
Okay.
I mean, I don't disagree. I do want to just make sure I'm understanding your first point, which is that are you saying that like some sort of like federal indemnity of these local systems against these issues that have come up around like shop classes, like creating exposure for lawsuits and things like that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's got to be, you cannot endeavor in something like this without engaging in some level of protections. You know, let's be honest, there's going to be that one little case, God knows where, that, you know, they find the right, you know, they start playing the game of lawsuit lottery. And you don't want a case like that to affect the whole process. In the case of BOCES, in New York, it hasn't. So...
Can I just chime in real quick?
Yeah.
I feel like that is so ridiculous. Like, if you're in wood shop class and your arm gets cut off, like, of course, like, it's a liability. You're using saws. Like, there's a lot of things that, of course, that's going to play a factor. I mean, that's in your regular job. So for you to have a whole lawsuit that will shut down a program because of that, it's almost laughable.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to be your job. It's another thing for you to be like a student in like a
Well,
public
But you should
education
have
system.
teachers and a skill set that's keeping you safe and teaching. Just like anything else. I mean, how do people learn how to weld? You could literally go to BOCES. And I'm not a Republican whatsoever, so I'm just going to do that disclosure.
Yeah, we don't
But
want you to
I
get burned
will
at the
say-
stake when you
Not
get on.
even, no, because I feel like there's a lot of people, I say that because I think there's a lot of people that are probably watching that also are not Republicans. And this is a great thing that he's talking
I
about.
agree.
This program,
I agree.
whether you're Republican or not. Like, learning how to weld in high school put you in a complete upper echelon when you graduate high school. Welders, underwater welders are making a crazy salary compared to other
I'm
jobs.
sure they are.
So, of course, there is safety precautions, but with everything, there's going to be a safety situation. I mean, you can go to regular high school and slip in the hallway and break a leg and all that, but we don't shut down the whole school. I do think that the risks, the reward outweighs the risk, because when it comes to learning a trade that's going to set you up for your whole life, especially when you're from a lower income household, when you're from a place where your parents can't even set you up for college,
That's
'cause
right.
they can't even read the application, they don't know what to write. Like, that's reality for the majority of people, especially when you grow up in the North. Like, I'm from New York, so at the end of the day, it's like a lot of us, I have a cousin right now who just got her, shout out to you, Fabia, tell you, like, she just taught herself everything that she needs to know to get her son accepted to college, because the school that he's going to, he's one of the only black kids, it's a low income area, they don't care if he goes to college or not, but she's teaching herself everything she needs to know to go to college visits, to do this, to do that. But in their area, if there was a BOCES that he could have gone to, you know, that would have gave him a skill set, and it wouldn't have been so pressed that you have to go play a sport to go to get some money.
That's
So
what
I
we're
will
talking
say
about. Yeah.
that out of anything that's being talked about, that's the one thing that I'm like a huge advocate for.
So,
I mean,
go ahead.
so
I'm
I-
No, go
I'm
ahead.
tied up. I'm tied up.
Sorry.
So yeah, I'm just curious just about, like, again, Georgia is not New York.
It's not
Georgia
New York.
Georgia is a state where there is much less government control over things, and you have to be much more creative with like how to make these things happen. And
Yeah.
part of me, so I'm just gonna share just one thing really quickly, which is that, like, not long ago, I was listening to the news or something like that. There was an Asian woman on the news, and she was lamenting the fact that, like, Asians are like not involved in politics. Right?
That's
She's like,
bullshit,
She's like, whoa,
but you know what?
hold on. Let me finish.
Let
Let me
him
finish.
say
Let me finish.
what he's
Let
saying.
me finish.
Crazy.
I don't know how many Asians you know that are involved in like doing politics,
Anyway.
but I can name like one. But the point is that, you know, the whole mentality was that it took Asians to be involved in politics for Asians to be successful, right? That was a point, which I think is bullshit. All right.
I can segue
Talk
off
to
of
me.
that.
Talk to me.
You had the same thing in the Irish community back at the turn of the century. You had a community that was marginalized at that time. At that time, they were marginalized even more so than the black community.
That's true.
And how they were
I don't
able
know.
to.
I don't know, man.
I mean, you're also
You're talking like slaves versus indentured servants. I mean,
no.
there's
You need a
I'm
little
just saying,
education on red legs.
I feel like I understand these things.
You don't
Educate me. Tell me what I don't know.
You
Tell me
don't
what I don't know.
transport indentured servants in chains. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
No, yeah, you're right. You didn't transport them in chains. Yes, that's correct. That's my whole point.
So let me say this, just to kind of curtail and bring it in a little bit. First and foremost, yes, Asians are involved. That would be another show.
Yeah, right.
That's the John Lewis voter ID law. So we get talking about them.
Can you name me two Asians that are involved on like the state level?
I
don't know. I mean, the vice president for one.
Right.
Do you want to start there? I mean, do you want to start with
State level. I'm talking about the state of Georgia.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to say. I mean, the vice
I
president
can name one. But I'm just saying.
is well. She says she's black, but then when she gets sworn in, she says she's a Pacific Islander.
So
I mean,
all right. Give me the national level. Give me two Asians who are elected on the national level.
I'll do a shout out to my boy Fun Fong, who's running for.
Yes, and I was with him at the
running
gun
or
show.
elected.
That's
the whole point I'm making here.
Okay, sure. Me and him
Who's actually elected?
We were all at the gun show. Fung Fong and Dorian. We were at the gun show at Gwinnett County Fairgrounds a couple weeks ago. Well, actually, about less than 2 weeks ago. Now, let me just briefly, and then we can get back to it, because I think you brought up some good points. I think now I know we're gonna have a series really on this, but. Okay, the skilled workers. What is the true benefit to the community? When the skilled workers come in, they bring in more revenue, and what does that do to property value, reducing crime, helping to slow down or halt gentrification?
I want to add in there too, as you explain
Gentrification
everything,
is not bad.
the water boy situation, which I already know the answer. Trade school could definitely help, but the water boy situation is getting out of control in Atlanta. We all know that the young boys that are on the corners selling the water and trying to do this and that, they need help. So what can you do to help them?
Okay. This gentleman over here talked about he's from Riverdale, and I could almost bet you that the last time you were in Riverdale, is it the same Riverdale that you left when you graduated high school?
Riverdale changed.
Thank you.
For the better, for the worse? For the worse. Okay, I had a constituent come up to me and was talking about the very thing in South Fulton, and she said, this place has changed in 20 years. And it made me think, well, how long has the incumbent been in office? 20 years. But I digress. I talked to some of my SpaceX guys, and I was like, what would it take to locate a facility here in the 13th district? And we kind of chopped it up about other things, and they were, we're all engineers and stuff, so they're researching it and stuff. He says, you need to look at the 2020 census. Why do I need to look at the 2020 census? So I go and I look at it. Only 2.8% of the working population in the 13th district, that's the working population, are skilled workers. 2.8%. That's it. When a company, like, for example, Rivian, electric vehicles, nice vehicles. I actually drove one when I was at Blue Origin. Wanted to relocate to the Metro Atlanta area. One of the considerations is there a skilled worker base in the location to support their manufacturing facility as well as support manufacturing facilities. So just imagine they look at that statistic.
You see this badge? You know what company that is?
Mm-hmm. Microsoft, yeah.
Yep. Same thing. Same situation. Like, they make a decision to relocate based on the skill set of the workforce. And, I mean, look, we're speaking the same language, man. Like, my issue is just a technical one of, like, I don't know that the feds are the right way for this thing to go down. Like, it's what I'm really getting down to.
That's a good point. I want to take that.
Rasheed's
The reason why I didn't run for a state seat, that I wanted to run for a federal seat, was because then, being in Congress in Washington, I could source the resources necessary to make this a success. This isn't something that I'm going to try to do and it may work, it may not work. Like everything in my life, when I said I wanted to be a mechanic and I went to BOCES, I became a mechanic. When I wanted to be a superbike racer and they said, "You the wrong complexion, brother, that's a white man's sport. You're looking at a superbike racer."
Yeah.
When they told me I couldn't earn a degree in engineering at age 50, I'm an engineer.
And to your point, Caesar,
I feel you.
there are funds that are literally earmarked that are not being properly allocated. Somebody has to get in there and do it.
All right, wait, I have another question because we're, our time is running slow. What are you going to do for small businesses? I'm a small business owner, and I feel like nobody, what?
I didn't say one word.
You said,
Bruh.
I don't think I was looking at your attire and it messed me up.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I hope so.
Go ahead.
All right, so small business owners.
What I would do for small business owners.
And women. So please put them both together. Please, 'cause we didn't really say
Small
anything about the
business
women.
owners. Let's title it small business owners, and under that title includes women, includes men.
You hear
includes
that,
anybody,
women?
entrepreneurs.
For us, because every other week it's never about us.
And
Go
I will
ahead.
start that answer by telling you a little experience I had here in Metro Atlanta when I had my
And
business.
Caesar, I hate to cut in on you. If you can, so I can give everybody a final thought, maybe in no way, shape, or form, don't want to shave it down. If you can condense it,
You wasting
Yeah,
2
time.
minutes.
I'll be
Go ahead,
quick.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I had my business, I
First,
went
the
for
women
a
is the condensed part.
small business loan through the Minority Business Development, MBDC, or whatever it was here in Atlanta. And after paying for a business plan and everything else, they told me the only way they could help me is if I had matching funds.
Right.
And if I had matching funds, why would I need them?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so what I want to do is with the funding that they already have, because they receive millions of dollars for this. The second part of my program is fiscal accountability and oversight of federal resources. If you get resources to address small business, it has to go to small business, not a token gesture, not a symbolic.
Are you going to talk about the $10 million that disappeared for small businesses?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When I could go there and look at them in the face, and they tell me I need matching funds, I'm like, "You're supposed to be helping minority small business owners. What are you doing?"
Right.
Not
You
helping.
know, that's why I want fiscal accountability and oversight. You are not going to solicit federal funding and resources on the suffrage of the inner city communities for it not to hit the street.
Exactly.
And this isn't something that I dreamed up. I actually went through it, like I explained to you. I want there to be entrepreneurship incubators.
Yeah.
Okay, and not just with any federal funding or resources, but also incorporate local resources, local industries. Because a lot of those ideas support or will support local industries that relocate in this district. This is what I want for the 13th will set the standard.
Yes.
And we will bring in our community, because if you want to avert any kind of gentrification that occurs when a local economy jumps up and they have to bring in skilled labor from outside, train your people within the community.
Yes.
That's
You have higher incomes, you have higher skill sets, you're drawing in more industry, more business, you're increasing the property values. The rising tide lifts all boats.
Kind of reminds you of a pseudo Black Tulsa. Now, I want to say this, and then I'll let everybody get a couple seconds in. First off, it was a pleasure to have you on. We look forward to doing this again. I know that we will do it again. And to your point, the GOP and the Republican Party are dedicated to, in the event that anybody has this idea that we want to control people, we are dedicated to entrepreneurship. We want you to help yourself. We are not about, because that's when you become a free man,
Yes.
when you help yourself. When somebody else help you, then they control you. You understand what I'm saying? So, brother Rashid, if you got anything to say, Jay, my assistant, she's badass. I know she's gonna say something when we.
She got my vote.
Yeah. We should be voting for her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this will be a longer term conversation. I'm not convinced, but I'm open to being convinced.
Love it.
I don't know that the feds are the best way for this to happen. I do believe that, like, I mean, number one, I don't think government is a way to make this happen. But I detect your skepticism in government, and so I appreciate what I detect there. I think it's just tough. I think it's tough in Georgia where, like, the local school districts and whatnot are really the ones that, like, control all these things. And I think the feds have very limited impact on that. But I'm open to hear, like, how that could work. I think we all want the same thing. And that's, Laris and I are, when we started singing, we were polar opposites. He used to accuse me of being a Republican, and he was Obama's defense lawyer. I said, anything bad about Obama? Laris is like, what? He's dropping the penal code on me about Obama. All right, sorry. Anyway, so it's been a pleasure. Let's talk more.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Jay, I have a lot to say and no time to say it. So, I hope that we do this again. I have many more questions. I love to ask questions, very inquisitive human, so I just want to know all of your thoughts. But I will say on my final thought, I think that BOCES is the best way to go. Anybody who's running for anything should definitely take that note, because being somebody who experienced that, and it definitely changed my life. I think that Atlanta, I will speak for Atlanta as a whole because most of my time in Georgia has been in Atlanta, could definitely benefit from that. We have too many young people that do not have any type of direction in anything, and I do think that view as a whole will allow people to have a sense of direction, and that is important to me.
All right.
And so forth.
And so,
All right. Well, we're gonna do it again. We recording live from East Point, so you know what I'm gonna say. East Point, smoke some dank.
Oh, National got the skanks.